It's just a game of words, and I see no virtue in it. Then there is the case, in my opinion, of the ridiculous who are deserving of ridicule. If an academic or a public figure is a charlatan, he or she deserves to be reduced to ridicule. If there's no scholarship but simply theater and windbaggery, and you've demonstrated there's no scholarship but theater and windbaggery, then there's a time-honored tradition for shouting that the emperor is naked. So if Professor Elie Wiesel comes to your university, charges a lecture fee in the tens of thousands of dollars, and the subject of his lecture is that the secret of Auschwitz truth lies in silence. And then he goes on to say, words are a kind of horizontal approach, while silence offers you a vertical approach. You plunge into it. I think it's perfectly reasonable to ask the question, does Elie Wiesel parachute into his lectures? Because this is sheer nonsense. And why shouldn't we say it? Or Phyllis Chesler writes a book on the new anti-Semitism, and she wants to show what a dreadful phenomenon it is. So she writes, there is a thrilling permissibility in the air, the kind of electrically charged and altered reality that acid trippers or epileptics may experience just prior to seizure. Doctored footage of fake Israeli massacres has now entered the imagination of billions of people like pornography. These ideas, one can never be forgotten. It's as if the political equivalent of the AIDS virus has been unleashed into the world. To be a Jew is to live dangerously, on the margins, with an open, circumcised heart. So I think it was perfectly warranted to write, acid trippers, epileptics, pornography, AIDS, circumscribed heart. One begins to wonder whether Chesler's magnum opus, Women and Madness, was autobiographical. Now, some of you may think that those comments were uncivil. But then I have to ask another question, and that's a serious question about the double standard. So August 6, 2000, the New York Times ran a review of my book, The Holocaust Industry. It was a full page in the Times, and the author described me and the book as bizarre, outrageous, paranoid, shrill, strident, indecent, juvenile, self-righteous, arrogant, stupid, smug, fanatic. And that was the first column. On February 7th, 2001, the Süddeutsche Zeitung, a German newspaper, quoted an American professor about me as follows: as concerns particular assertions made by Finkelstein, the appropriate response is not exhilarating debate, but tedious examination of his footnotes. Such an examination reveals that many of those assertions of Finkelstein are pure invention. No facts alleged by Finkelstein should be assumed to be really facts. No quotations in his book should be assumed to be accurate without taking the time to carefully compare his claims with the sources he cites. And then the Observer in 2006 quoted another American professor. The pro-Israel organizations, he said, have lost control of the debate. For a long time, all they had to deal with were people like Norman Finkelstein or Noam Chomsky, who they could dismiss as loonies of the left. Now they're having to face, for want of a better cliche, the mainstream, people like me, who have a fairly long established record of being social democrats, and certainly not on the crazy left, saying very critical things about Israel. Now, the first professor I cited was Omer Bartov, a university chair at Brown University. The second professor I cited, the one who said every word I write is a lie, all invention, just check his footnotes, that was Peter Novick from the University of Chicago. The third professor I cited, who referred to Professor Chomsky and myself as loonies of the left, the crazy left, that was one of the panelists this afternoon, Tony Judd. Now, I think that's legitimate. I don't have a problem with that. You have to be able to take it also. This sort of incivility is, in my view, it's permissible, although it becomes unserious, which is something different, if the ad hominems are not supported by or become a substitute for reasoned argument. Had I simply said that Professor Dershowitz was a plagiarist, falsifier, misrepresenter of evidence, and so forth, without documenting it, I think that would have been a serious violation of my responsibility. That's not what I did. I sat down and wrote a book because I recognized the charges were serious. And I documented them over 300 pages. It's not my fault when I did my homework, as it were, as a professor. He then wrote 160 pages single-spaced, because the correspondence has now come out through FOIA, 160 pages single-spaced correspondence trying to suppress publication of the book.